Imagine a place. Deep in the rainforests of West Africa, a kingdom rises. Its story is not written on paper. It is cast in bronze. It is carved in ivory. This was the kingdom of Benin. It stood for centuries, a beacon of power and art. Its heart was in what we now call Nigeria. This was not just a collection of huts. It was a civilization, a place of kings and warriors, a center of profound culture. The Benin Empire was not born overnight. It grew slowly like a great tree in the forest. Its roots went deep into the soil of history. It began around the 11th century, but its golden age was yet to come. From the 15th to the 19th century, it was a major power. We hear of Rome, we hear of Greece, we hear of Egypt. But the story of Benin is often lost, a forgotten chapter in the grand book of world history. Yet, its legacy is all around us. In museums across the globe, the famous Benin bronzes tell its tale. The kingdom's story begins with the Ogiso dynasty, the kings of the sky. They were the first rulers, they laid the foundations. But the people grew restless. They wanted a new kind of king. They sent a message to a neighboring king, the Oni of Ife, a powerful spiritual leader. A prince named Oranmiyan came. He found the people hard to govern. He called the land Il Ibinu, the land of vexation. This name would one day become Benin. Oranmiyan left, but he left behind a son. This son was named Iweka. He would become Iweka the first Oba of Benin. This was a new beginning. A new dynasty was born. It was around the year 1200. The Oba would become the center of the Benin world. He was more than a king. He was a divine figure, the political, military, and spiritual leader of his people. A complex system of chiefs and palace officials supported him. There were different orders of chiefs: the Uzama, the kingmakers; the Egevbo, the state councillors. Oba Iware the Great, who ruled in the 15th century, was a true empire builder. He was a magician, a warrior, and a reformer. At the heart of the empire was a great city, the capital, Edo. Today it is known as Benin City. But in its prime, it was a marvel of engineering. It was protected by a massive system of walls and moats. These were not simple fences. They were huge earthworks, dug by hand. The labor of thousands of people over centuries. The walls stretched for miles. Some sources say they were 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China. They enclosed the city. They enclosed the surrounding farmlands. They were a statement of power. These were the walls of Benin. They were a defensive masterpiece. The main wall around the inner city was tall and thick. Behind it was a deep moat. Life inside the walls was orderly. The city was laid out in a grid, a testament to advanced urban planning. Wide, straight avenues crossed the city. The rest of the city was divided into quarters. Each quarter was home to a specific craft guild: the woodcarvers in one area, the brass casters in another, the ivory workers in a third. Visitors from Europe were astounded. A Dutch account from the early 17th century describes the city. The writer speaks of a great city, as large as major European cities of the time. He notes the houses, well built and neat. He describes the king's palace, a collection of buildings with long, impressive galleries. He marvels at the cleanliness of the streets. Benin society was a pyramid. At the very top was the Oba. He was the sun around which everything revolved. His power flowed downwards. Below him were the chiefs. They were the pillars of the state. They held titles and responsibilities. Some were hereditary, passed from father to son. Others were granted by the Oba for service and loyalty. Below the chiefs were the common people, the farmers, the artisans, the soldiers. They lived their lives according to tradition. They paid homage to the Oba. The family was the core unit of society. Respect for elders was paramount. Life was communal. Everyone had a role to play. The well-being of the community was more important than the individual. What made Benin truly unique was its organization. It was a highly centralized state. The Oba's authority reached into every corner of the kingdom. He appointed governors to rule over distant territories. He collected taxes and tribute. He controlled all trade, especially with the Europeans. No one could trade for valuable goods like ivory or palm oil without the Oba's permission. The military was also key to Benin's success. Every man was a potential soldier. The army was well organized. It had different units and commanders. They were disciplined and effective. It was this combination of divine kingship, a loyal bureaucracy, economic control, and military might that made Benin so powerful and so different from its neighbors. The art of Benin was not just for decoration. It was a language. It was a record of history. It was a connection to the divine. The Obas Palace was a living museum. Its walls were covered in magnificent bronze plaques. These plaques told the story of the kingdom. They showed great battles. They depicted royal ceremonies. The artisans who created these masterpieces were highly revered. They worked exclusively for the Oba. The brass casters, the Igun Eronwan, were the most famous. They used the lost wax method, a complex process that requires incredible skill. These skills were passed down from father to son, a sacred trust. The result was art of breathtaking detail and beauty. Ivory carving was another high art. The elephant was a royal animal. Its tusks belonged to the Oba. Carvers would transform the ivory into intricate objects. They made ceremonial masks, salt cellars, and decorative horns. The famous mask of Queen Idia is a perfect example. She was the mother of a great Oba. The mask captures her serene and powerful beauty. It is a masterpiece of world art. When a new Oba came to the throne, he would commission an altar to his father. On this altar would be placed a bronze head, a memorial to the previous king. These heads are not exact portraits. They are idealized representations of kingship. The art of Benin was the ultimate expression of its culture. It was a culture centered on the king, the ancestors, and the enduring strength of the kingdom. In the late 15th century, a new sight appeared on the horizon. Tall ships with white sails. These were the Portuguese. They were the first Europeans to reach Benin. They were searching for a sea route to India. They were looking for gold, spices, and souls to convert. The people of Benin were curious. They were not intimidated. The Oba welcomed them. He saw an opportunity for trade, an opportunity to acquire new goods and new power. A relationship began. It was at first a partnership of equals. The Oba was in control. The Portuguese traders had to follow his rules. They could only trade through his officials. They brought goods the Benin people wanted. They brought copper and brass, which were vital for the bronze casters. They brought coral beads, which became a symbol of wealth and status. Most importantly, they brought guns, firearms. In exchange, Benin offered pepper, ivory, and palm oil. For a time, it also traded in enslaved people, often captives from its wars of expansion. The relationship was not just about goods. There was a cultural exchange. The Portuguese tried to convert the Oba to Christianity. They built a church. Some people in Benin did convert, but the Oba and the kingdom as a whole held fast to their own traditions. The Oba's divine power was rooted in his own religion, not a foreign one. Over the centuries, other European powers arrived. The Dutch, the British, the French. They all wanted a piece of the West African trade. Benin continued to trade with them. But the relationship began to change. The Europeans grew more powerful. They began to see Africa not as a place of kingdoms to trade with, but as a territory to be controlled. The balance of power was shifting. By the late 19th century, the world had changed. Europe was in the grip of the scramble for Africa. European nations were carving up the continent. They were creating colonies. They wanted Africa's resources: palm oil, rubber, timber. These were the raw materials for Europe's industrial revolution. The British had established a presence in the region around Benin. They called it the Niger Coast Protectorate. They wanted to control the trade routes. They wanted to deal directly with the producers. The Oba of Benin stood in their way. The Oba, Ovonramwen Nogbaisi, upheld the traditions of his ancestors. He controlled all trade. He had placed a ban on the export of palm oil. This frustrated the British merchants. They saw the Oba as an obstacle to profit, an obstacle to civilization, as they called it. The British consul, James Phillips, was an ambitious man. He wanted to force the Oba to open up his kingdom to free trade. He believed a show of force was necessary. He decided to lead an expedition to Benin City. He was warned not to go. He was told the Oba was celebrating an important religious festival, the Igwe festival. During this time, the Oba could not receive foreign visitors. It was a sacred period. Phillips ignored the warnings. He was arrogant. He believed his authority as a representative of the British Empire was absolute. In January 1897, he set off for Benin City. The leaders of Benin saw Philip's mission as a threat. They saw it as a prelude to an invasion. They had seen what happened to other kingdoms that resisted the British. They decided to act. A group of Benin warriors ambushed Philip's party before it reached the city. Philip and most of his European companions were killed. A few survived to tell the tale. To the people of Benin, it was an act of defense. To the British, it was a massacre. The news of the ambush reached London. The British press flew into a rage. They called for revenge. They painted the people of Benin as savages. They demanded that the City of Blood be punished. A huge military force was assembled. It was called the Benin Punitive Expedition. Over 1,200 well-armed soldiers, equipped with the latest rifles and machine guns. They were led by Admiral Sir Harry Rawson. In February 1897, the invasion began. The British forces advanced on the city from 3 directions. The warriors of Benin fought back bravely. They fought with courage and determination. But they were no match for the superior firepower of the British. Their spears and old muskets could not stop the Maxim guns. The British soldiers blasted their way through the defenses. After 10 days of fighting, they stood at the gates of Benin City. What happened next was an act of cultural destruction. The invading soldiers entered the great city. They looted it systematically. They stripped the Obas palace of its treasures. Then they set the city on fire. The great capital of the Benin Empire, a center of civilization for centuries, was burned to the ground. The great walls were breached. The city was left in ruins. The Oba, Ovonramwen, escaped. He went into hiding in the forest, but the British hunted him down. After 6 months, he surrendered to save his people from further suffering. He was put on trial. He was exiled to Calabar, another city in Nigeria. The kingdom of Benin, which had stood proud and independent for centuries, was no more. It was absorbed into the British Empire. A great light in West Africa had been extinguished. The fall was complete. The fall of Benin in 1897 was more than the end of a kingdom. It was the end of an era. The Benin bronzes, the kingdom's soul cast in metal, were scattered across the world. They ended up in museums in London, Berlin, and New York. They were admired for their beauty, but their story was often ignored. They were treated as artifacts of a primitive tribe, not the treasures of a fallen civilization. For Nigerians, this was a deep wound. But the people of Benin did not forget. They passed down their history. The royal line of Obas was eventually restored, though with much reduced power under British rule. The traditions continued. The spirit of the kingdom endured even in the shadow of colonial domination. And as Nigeria moved towards independence in the 20th century, the story of Benin took on a new meaning. It became a symbol of a proud pre-colonial past. Today, the legacy of Benin is a powerful force in Nigeria, and there is a growing global movement to bring the stolen treasures home, to return the Benin bronzes to Benin City, where they belong. This is not just about returning art, it is about restoring history. It is about healing the wounds of the past. It is about justice. The story of the Benin Empire is a story of rise and fall. It is a story of incredible artistic achievement and brutal colonial destruction. But it is also a story of survival. The kingdom may be gone, but its legacy lives on. It lives on in the art that still inspires awe. It lives on in the traditions of the Edo people, and it lives on in the fight to reclaim a stolen heritage. The tale of Nigeria's forgotten kingdom is a reminder that history cannot be erased. A story cast in bronze is a story that will endure forever.